What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my team selection for Game Week 16. So I'm going to run you through how the team is looking, thoughts on captaincy and why I might not go for Mo Salah, and also how I'm going to spend my 3 free transfers. And I warn you now, having so many transfers creates lots of different options, and therefore there's a lot of rambling in this video and not a huge amount of conclusions. So I'm just warning you now before you watch the whole thing because it's quite long. And quickly, I'll run you through how I did in Game Week 15 as well, which was a monster week for me. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Check out Fantasy Football Hub using the links in the description below and take advantage of their 30% off 30-day free trial offer that they have on at the moment. Otherwise, let's get into it. So let's start with how I did in Game Week 15, and it was easily my best game week of the season so far. So I ended up finishing on 92 points. After Sunday's matches, I was actually on 94, but after the West Ham Wolves game on Monday, they took a bonus point off of both Solanke and Saliba, so it knocked me down to 92, but obviously that's still a great score. The game week rank was 12,000, and that put me from 860k overall rank up to 268k. So nearly a 600,000 place green arrow, which is great. And I'm delighted with that, especially when I was 2.9 million after game week 9. So in 6 weeks, I've gone from 2.9 million to 268k. Obviously, you need some luck along the way, and I'll talk about how that happened this week. But I'm going to take that. I'd love to get lucky for the rest of the season. It's much more fun when you are doing well. So hopefully I can kick on from here. But I'm not naive enough to think that it's just green arrows from here on out. At some point soon, there's going to be a few reds. I've just got to hope that they're not massive ones. Although I am a little bit worried about my team this week. But again, I'll talk about that in a minute. In terms of the luck this week, there's really 2 things that probably helped me out. One in particular was Storm Dara calling off the Everton versus Liverpool game, because that meant instead of captaining Salah, I went for Cole Palmer, who got me 36 points. Now, obviously, if Salah had played, he could have got something close to that as well, but a lot more people would have captained Salah, and so the increase in rank wouldn't have been so high. I think because Salah missed out, a lot of us went to Cole Palmer, but some people went to Saka, to Haaland, maybe even to ISAK, Watkins against Southampton at home. None of those players did anywhere near as well as Palmer. So in the end, that worked out really nicely for me. So that game getting called off with only one player in it, which was Salah, who everyone owns anyway, or at least a lot of people do, wasn't really that big of a deal. And also on Saturday morning, and please drink responsibly, unlike I did on Friday night, I was very hungover. I didn't even do a deadline stream. I contemplated using my 2 free transfers, which would have probably been Lewis to Howson from Bournemouth to free up money to do Raul Jimenez to ISAK. Now, to be fair, ISAK did return, but also so did Lewis and Raul Jimenez. And in fact, Raul Jimenez got 8 points, and I think ISAK got exactly the same. So I wouldn't have gained anything from that move. And Lewis getting 4 points, although he got sent off, which was frustrating because that second yellow should have never stood. That's the second sending off I feel like I've had this season that should never have been. Lewis and Bruno Fernandes. He still got 4 points, which was more than what Howson got at Bournemouth because they conceded. So I saved my 2 free transfers. I got returns from the 2 players I was considering getting rid of. I was thinking about other moves for like Saka and stuff, but I don't think that was ever going to happen. And I got the captaincy on Palmer. So overall, a really lucky week. And because some of those players that I didn't own, like Haaland, ISAK, Watkins, etc., didn't get huge points, and my players did, it was just a massive week. So Raul Jimenez wiped out my double Arsenal clean sheet. Didn't matter a huge amount because Saliba went and scored again for the 2nd week in a row. Super lucky. The guy had not had a shot until the last 2 games. And the first goal, he didn't even know anything about. So again, that's just the luck you need. Bruno Fernandes gets a 9-pointer. He was terrible for me for the first 9 game weeks. The last 6, he's been brilliant. I think he's got over 40 points during those games. So a 9-pointer from him. And obviously I kept in Burmo, 13 points. I did say on the team selection video, for 1 week only, I felt like Burmo could match or outscore the likes of Mitoma, Bowen and Gordon. That's basically what happened. Newcastle at home was not a bad fixture at all. And even Solanke chipped in with 6 points. And obviously other highly owned players like Cunha blanked, Nuri only got 4 points. So it was just one of those weeks that I've been asking for a few times on the deadline stream where everything just goes right and you get a big green arrow. And that's exactly what's happened. I'm probably not going to get another one like this for a while, but I'll take this one and hopefully I can start pushing towards top 100k eventually. It's probably going to take a good few weeks. There'll be red arrows along the way as well. but decent week. The only thing that's been annoying really the last couple of weeks is Gabriel missing out. Now, obviously, Arsenal conceded, and it was to my forward, so I'm not that bothered. But he could have got a goal from a set piece like Saliba. Against Man United, he would have got the clean sheet, and he would have had chances. Like, Arsenal did really well from set pieces against United. So, a bit frustrating that he's been missing out, but I haven't been punished because Saka hasn't done anything over the last 2 weeks. That's probably going to change with the next 3 fixtures Arsenal have got. So let's talk about Game Week 16. So going into Game Week 16, because I didn't spend my 2 free transfers last week, I've now got 3, and I've still got that 2.6 million in the bank. Now, I'd be very surprised if that doesn't get spent this week. It's about time I used it, and I do need a few upgrades in various places in this team. So I don't expect to have a huge amount of money in the bank when we get to Game Week 17. In goal, super easy choice this week, as normal. I'm playing Raya against Everton at home and benching Fabianski against Bournemouth away. With my defence, I'm going to have to use at least one of my transfers on a defender, and I would not be surprised if I make 2 defender transfers. What I'm not sure about is exactly who I'm going to sell and exactly who I'm going to bring in. So let's just talk through who I've got. So Gabriel is yellow flagged. He wasn't in the Champions League squad last night for Arsenal. We're not going to get any news from Mikel Arteta about a timeline. He might say that he's close or something like that, but he's not going to say he's back this weekend or he'll be back next weekend. We're just not going to get that information. He's already missed 2 games and half of the West Ham game as well. So he is becoming a bit of a consideration to sell for me. That would free up an Arsenal slot if I ever want to bring Saka in as well. But also, I know if I take him out and then he's back for Game Week 17, that will be a killer because he is definitely better than Saliba when it comes to goal threat. And obviously, in terms of clean sheets, they get the same amount of points. I know Saliba has done well the last 2 weeks, but if I was betting on one of these two to score goals moving forward, it's always been and always will be Gabriel. So I'm a bit loath to sell him, but if he doesn't play, I'm in a bit of trouble. Like, Saliba's fine against Everton at home. He's fit. He's going to start. But I've got Lewis suspended. I've got Pinnock against Chelsea away. Not a great fixture. Brentford concede a lot of goals as it is. There's no way he gets a clean sheet in that match. And then Greaves for Ipswich against Wolves away. He might not even end up being in the squad. He wasn't in the squad last week. Now, that wasn't a injury concern as far as we know. It was just McKenna not wanting centre-backs on the bench. But there's no guarantee he's going to start. So I might have Gabriel out again, Lewis definitely suspended, Greaves might not even be in the squad, and Pinnock's got a terrible fixture. So 4 of my 5 defenders are looking pretty bad this week. Saliba's the only one that I can kind of rely on. So I've got to make at least 1 transfer. The reason why I might only make 1 is I could sell Rico Lewis, for example, gamble on Gabriel starting. I don't necessarily agree with people that say when Gabriel comes back, it'll be off the bench before he starts. I think if he's fit and available, he'll probably just be straight back into the 11. So I could just sell Rico Lewis, hope that Gabriel starts, and if he doesn't, just take the very few points from Pinnock and have an extra transfer to spend next week. Basically, what I don't really want to do is spend a transfer on bench cover. Because if I get a defender in like Colwill or Lewis, Hall or someone like that for Pinnock, and then Gabriel plays, it's a bit of a waste of a transfer. I hate making transfers just to upgrade your bench. But the position I'm in this week, I might have to do it. So in terms of defenders that might come in, I'm quite tempted still to get a Liverpool one. And I've got the money to go from Rico Lewis straight up to Trent Alexander-Arnold. That does have knock-ons to the attacking transfers I can make later on. I'll talk about that when we get to midfielders and forwards. But in theory, I can go straight from Rico Lewis to Trent and have 3 Arsenal defenders and 1 Liverpool and just play them every week, presuming that Gabriel is back sooner rather than later. So that's an option. I haven't completely ruled out Virgil van Dijk either, because that money makes it easier for some of those attacking moves instead, because he's 0.6 million cheaper. But I know deep down Trent is the one that I want from Liverpool. Like, his attacking upside is just so good. The only thing that is slightly putting me off is the number of fixtures they've got coming up. Like, for Game Week 17 to 19, it's Sunday, Thursday, Sunday turnaround. It's possible that Trent gets benched for one of those games. And if it is going to be one of those matches, it's almost certainly going to be the Leicester at home game, which is the best fixture that Liverpool have in the next 4 game weeks. So there are some slight concerns there. In terms of Trent's fitness right now, he's just played 90. He got a bit of a break because of no Everton game. I'm sure he's fine, right? And he can go and play all these matches. But he has had a few muscle injuries like last season and this season. It's not a complete guarantee that he will start all those games. That's why I've not completely ruled out Van Dijk. The problem with him is 6.4 million just feels expensive. I know Liverpool are probably going to have a double around 25. I'm probably going to want I'm probably going to want a triple up on Liverpool. He guarantees me minutes for pretty good fixtures. He's got good goal threat. But there's part of me that thinks just don't spend 6.4. Put that money in attack instead. So Liverpool defenders not ruled out. I think Levi Colwill is definitely a decent enough option at 4.5 million. There is no excitement about Levi Colwill whatsoever, but the fixtures are so good for so long. He's excellent cover. Like, he's on 3 yellow cards. He's only got to get through 4 more matches before the threshold goes up to 10. So I'm not hugely worried about a suspension. I think players are also quite aware of yellow cards. We saw like Jackson pulling down the shirt of Enzo Fernandez and stuff like that. But he's a centre-back, right? Yellow cards can happen. So it's a slight concern, but not a huge one. I think with the fixtures they've got, it wouldn't be great to bring him in versus Brentford at home because I've still got Mbeumo and I'm probably not going to sell him this week. But Everton away, Fulham at home, Ipswich away, Palace away, Bournemouth at home, Wolves at home. This is not a guarantee of clean sheets for Chelsea, but as fixture runs go, they're pretty good. And Colwill's absolutely nailed on. I know he missed that Southampton game through rotation because Maresca rested a lot of players, but I'm not so sure that happens over Christmas. I think Ipswich away is a tougher game than Southampton away, and I'm not sure Maresca will definitely bench him for that game. I think outside of that, there's no real matches there where I think, Chelsea can take it easy. So I think there's a good chance Colwill plays all those games. The more exciting pick is Lewis Hall, and he's cheaper at 4.4. Leicester at home, Ipswich away right in front of him. I do worry about the Newcastle defence more so than the Chelsea one, but Lewis Hall is definitely more attacking than Colwill. And having Leicester at home right in front of you is quite appealing. So there is a chance I will just go for him. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking Lewis Hall exciting pick, Levi Colwill boring. But it's so often that the boring pick just does well. Because having that player you can rely on for so long just lets you bank more transfers. And I think with the assistant manager chip being announced yesterday, we're going to want to spend transfers on managers because there's so many points up for grabs. And therefore, we're going to want to be able to save transfers at certain times. And I just think that Colwill will guarantee me at least one spare transfer somewhere down the line. Lewis Hall, not necessarily. And the fixtures aren't that great after Ipswich away. Even Ipswich away, I wouldn't necessarily be super confident in a clean sheet. Then Villa at home, United away, Spurs away. It's not great. If I can cover him for those games, I might think about it. But right now, I'm more leaning towards Levi Colwill. Just a couple of other options that are on my mind is Timber at 5.7. That would be if I do Gabriel out to stick with a triple Arsenal defence. I don't see me doing that, but it's definitely a consideration. And then the only other defender I think I'm considering right now is Howson still from Bournemouth. Now, is he completely nailed on? I don't know if I can guarantee that. But Senesi, is it Senesi? No, it's Senesi, right? I think I've got that right. He's out for quite a while. It's going to be months probably. And so they need someone to play instead. And he's played the last 2 games for 90 minutes. So I'm not sure there's a huge amount of worry there. He's already scored as well. But will he definitely play all these matches? I don't know. But there are some good games in there. West Ham at home in 16, Palace at home in 18, Everton at home in 20. These are all games that I could play him in. And he's only 4.3 million. So I think they are the main defenders that I'm looking at. So Lewis Hall, Colwill, Howson as the cheap ones. Trent and Van Dijk if I want Liverpool. And then Timber if I want to stick to triple Arsenal defence and I decide to sell Gabriel. If I had to say right now what the moves are, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, which I know doesn't help. I think Lewis to Trent and roll 2 transfers is definitely right up there, but it feels a bit risky with Gabriel. So maybe Lewis to Trent and Pinnock to Colwill just for some cover, or Lewis Hall. If I decide to just ignore Saka for a while, then I might just get 2 cheap defenders in and maybe use that money for something like ISAK instead. I can't bring myself to sell Gabriel. That's what I'm struggling with. even though if he misses out again, we'll get no information from Arteta for next week, and we'll be going into game week 17 blind, like not knowing if he's going to play or not. So all I can tell you is I've got to make at least one defender transfer. There's a high chance that I make two. I think I will probably go boring with Colwill. It's just whether or not I buy a Liverpool defender or put that out for a few more weeks. I'm going to struggle to sell Gabriel. The worst thing about it is, while I'm rambling about this for nearly 10 minutes, having triple Arsenal defence and not having Saka has not been that bad. It's not fun watching Saka, but it's not been terrible for my team. But having triple Arsenal defence when it's actually only double defence because Gabriel keeps missing out, that sucks. So I may well sell him because I'm not sure I'm not sure I need triple Arsenal defence long term anyway. I think from game week 19 onwards, I'd be happy to reduce the numbers to 2 or 1 because the fixtures get a bit more difficult. Anyway, it's boring talking about defenders, but I'm probably going to have to sell 1 or 2. Let's talk about midfield. So this week I'm playing a 3-5-2. Let's talk about the easy midfielders first of all. So as you might imagine, Salah and Palmer going absolutely nowhere. No consideration whatsoever to sell them anytime soon. At the moment, I've got the captain's armband on Palmer rather than Salah. And that's mostly because he's playing Brentford at home. And also I feel like it's going to be a slight differential. Now don't get me wrong, Palmer is heavily owned. There's going to be plenty of people that captain him, especially after he got 36 points last week. But I still think overall, more people will captain Salah. And also for Fulham, they may well still be missing Anderson through injury. We'll have to wait and see what Marco Silva says in the press conference tomorrow. And Bassi is suspended. So their defence has been weakened a little bit. But in terms of performances so far this season, Fulham are defending much better than Brentford. Like Brentford have still got a good few wins and they're doing well enough because they're scoring so many goals. But they can't keep the ball out the back of their own net. And I know for certain, if Salah had Brentford at home and Palmer had Fulham at home, there is no way I would be considering the differential choice. I would definitely be captaining Salah along with everyone else and then thinking about captaincy from 17 onwards. But because Palmer's got the better fixture, I am considering it. And their stats so far this season, Palmer and Salah, have actually been quite close. Salah's got ever so slightly more goal threat and Palmer's ever so slightly more assist threat. But overall, the numbers are pretty even. So I'm not completely ruling out going to Salah by the deadline on Saturday, but the armband has been on Palmer all week, and I don't really want to change it. As for my other midfielders, Rodgers against Forest away is not necessarily ideal, but in terms of the value to my team, I got him at 5 million. You know that by now. He keeps starting. I think we're worried about a rest, but it's just not happening. It could happen over Christmas, of course, but he keeps starting. I think he's important to that Villa team, so it's not a bad fixture. I'm not completely ruling out at some point selling Rodgers. He is on 4 yellow cards, so he's close to a suspension, but that's not the main reason. I basically am using him for cover of other players quite a lot. So there's part of me that just thinks, if you need to use him that much, why not upgrade him to someone better? Like go for a Matoma or someone like that if I can make the money work. Maybe even Eze at Crystal Palace, like he's back fit, playing quite regularly. That is something I'm considering because as much as Rodgers is my 8th attacker, he is starting quite a bit over the next few weeks. So he's starting this week against Forest away because I'm benching Raul Jimenez. He's not playing in game week 17 for City at home. In game week 18, when he's got Newcastle away, I think there's someone with a bad... Yeah, Raul Jimenez has got Chelsea away. So that's quite a close call between the two. I don't necessarily have to play Rodgers that week, but he might be nice. And then in game week 19, he's got Brighton at home. That's the same week that Mbeumo plays Arsenal. And then in 20, Rodgers has got Leicester at home, the same week that I think Fernandes plays Liverpool away. Let me just double check that. Yeah. So as much as I see Rodgers as an 8th attacker, it is possible that I might want to play him in 4 of the next 5 game weeks, which I think is quite funny. So there is part of me that thinks about upgrading him, but honestly, I think the money it would take to get him to someone that I would want is just better used elsewhere. So Rodgers will probably stay. Some people might want to go to like Enzo Fernandez and free up some money and go for someone with better fixtures that's not close to a suspension. I think Enzo Fernandez is a nice enabler at 5 million. And if you really need someone around that price, he's probably who I would go for. And if I was on wildcard, I would definitely consider it. But I've got a gut feeling that the hype around Enzo Fernandez is way too high for what he's actually going to offer. I think he's good, but I think expectations are being set quite high because of what's happened over the last kind of 4 or 5 weeks. So I don't see me using a transfer on Rodgers to Enzo. As for Fernandez and Mbeumo, it doesn't look great this week. Fernandez has got City away, Mbeumo's got Chelsea away, but both of those two players will look better in game week 17 and 18. So for Fernandez, it is Bournemouth at home, I think, next week. Yeah, and then Wolves away in 18. Again, around a period of December where there's going to be rotation for some players, almost certainly not Fernandez, and almost certainly not Mbeumo as well, who has Forest at home in 17, Brighton away in 18. They're not perfect fixtures, but I really don't mind holding them for those two. So it might be that I just roll with it in game week 16, even though it doesn't look great on paper, and just go against bringing in Saka. I'm really not sure what to do with Saka. I don't think he's going to come in this week. I think the price rise last night has made it tricky for my team. I'd rather have Saka than Fernandez, don't get me wrong, but if Gabriel plays, triple defence is also pretty good. And I've got routes to get Saka later if I want to. I think by game week 19, I'd much rather have Saka than triple defence. But I think for the next 3 weeks, triple defence actually looks okay. And if Gabriel plays, which I know is a doubt, Gabriel and Fernandez versus Saka and a cheaper defender, I think it's quite even. If not this week, it is over the next couple of weeks. I'm not going to captain Saka. I've said that a lot because I've got Palmer and Salah instead. So he's not, I don't feel such a pressure to buy him. And also he is getting quite expensive now. He's 10.6. That's partly my own fault for blocking myself off from being able to get him weeks ago when he was cheaper. But I can't go back in time and change a move that I made. I've got to basically decide what to do moving forward based on what information we have now. Right now the info is Saka is 10.6 and that's made it a lot more difficult for me to get him. And I just think Fernandez and Mbeumo are better. Sorry, not better, but they're okay over the next few weeks. Like with Mbeumo and Fernandez, I'm more than happy to sell them if the time's right. I'm just not sure it's this week. And even if I was to get Saka for Fernandez, Mbeumo would still be staying this week anyway. So I think the longer term move is to downgrade Mbeumo to someone else when I need the money for another move. I'm just not sure what week that is going to be in yet. And I know that next week when I see my team on paper without Saka, it won't look so bad. I do think this week for my team, it's not, I wouldn't say it's damage limitation. It's not in a terrible place. But players like Cunha and Aït-Nouri have got Ipswich at home. I don't own any of them. They're quite highly owned. Lots of people have got ISAK. I don't know if I'm going to buy him. Loads of people have got Saka. I probably won't own him. So there are some highly owned players I'm going up against. But if I can come out on the right side of that again, then happy days, right? It's possibly another green hour. And I think those players I've just mentioned, most of them anyway, I'm kind of happy to take on a little while longer. Like, I'm not naive. I know that Saka is going to do better than Fernandez this week. But if it's only minimal damage, I think from 17-18, it might look a little bit better. And I can always go to Saka, buy that Ipswich game in 18 if I want to. So I hate to say it because I know people are like almost... So there's some people anyway that seem very frustrated at me that I haven't bought Saka yet. But it's probably going to be another week without him. And then my two up front are Dominic Solanke against Southampton away and João Pedro against Crystal Palace at home. So although I don't currently have popular options like Cunha versus Ipswich, ISAK versus Leicester, I do think my two forwards are not that bad for game week 16. On the bench, it's Raul Jimenez against Liverpool away. It was always my intention to bench him this week. In terms of what he offers going forward, I actually still think he's a pretty good, cheap forward if that's what you're looking for. I got him at 5.7. Unfortunately, he's gone down to 5.5. I know there was some concern when he was benched against Brighton whether Muniz would now just come in and take his place. But the fact that Jimenez was straight back in versus Arsenal tells me he's still first choice. He took his goal really well. And if you watch that game, his all-round play was just brilliant. So I think it's pretty clear that he's still first choice forward for Fulham. But because of that benching against Brighton, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to play every single game, which is a bit of a worry over Christmas. Like, if he plays Southampton and misses Chelsea, I'm fine with that. If it's the other way around, it's not so good. But then he does have Bournemouth at home in 19, Ipswich at home in 20, West Ham away in 21, Leicester away in 22. The fixtures are pretty good. And Andreas Pereira is not playing that many minutes right now. So if we go to Fulham and look what he's had recently, let me see here. 30 minutes, 19, 0, 58. So the minutes have gone down quite a bit. And that means that Jimenez is almost certainly now first choice penalty taker, at least when Andreas Pereira is off the pitch. When he's on the pitch, he may well take it, but he also missed the last one. So Jimenez, I don't think it's being talked about that much, but Jimenez is a 5.5 million potentially penalty taking forward with pretty good fixtures. There are just a few risks around his minutes. So I still quite like him. My intention is to play him against Southampton at home. The one forward I would really like this week is Alexander Isak. He's got Leicester at home, Ipswich away. The fixtures are just good for a while. And at 8.6 million, I think it's a pretty good price. Callum Wilson apparently is going to be out for another couple of months with a hamstring issue. So any worries about him taking minutes off Isak are just not there. The only slight concern I would have over Isak probably is whether he can stay fit with all these fixtures that are coming up. But he did start 27 times last season. He has played 90 minutes for, what is this now? 7 of the last 8 games. It was just that Crystal Palace game that he missed. So there is good signs there, and the fixtures are great. Even after Ipswich, like Villa at home, United away, Spurs away, they're not fixtures to be worried about. Then you've got Wolves at home, Bournemouth at home, Southampton away, Fulham at home. That is just a really good fixture run for an attacker. Not so good for a defender, but attacking-wise, it looks great. The main problem I would have is finding a way... Sorry, not finding a way, but deciding, and I'm a little bit indecisive this week, as you can tell. In some ways, having 3 transfers just makes things... There's almost too many options. With one transfer, it's just so easy to roll if your team looks good. Like, if I had this team with one transfer, I'd make one defender move and not worry about taking a hit. But 3 transfers opens up so many routes. So, I could go from Solanke to Isak and still have a bit of money to spend, but it's going to block me off getting a Liverpool defender. I don't think the funds quite work. Also, selling Solanke before Southampton away also does not feel great whatsoever. I think Isak is better this week and better in the long term, but obviously you pay extra for that and you have to take out a player before Southampton. It's not great. That would leave me 1.5 in the bank. So if I sold Rico Lewis, it gives me 6.2 million, which is not quite enough to go to someone like Van Dijk. So I'd have to go for like 2 cheap defenders, like Lewis to Lewis Hall, right? Or, so Rico Lewis to Lewis Hall, and then Pinnock to Colwell, something like that, maybe to give me that cover for Gabriel. Or I could sell Gabriel. That would be another option. So if I put in Van Dijk for him... No, that's not going to work, is it? No, it's not going to work because Virgil van Dijk's more expensive. No, it would work, sorry. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I could sell... I could actually go up to Trent, couldn't I? If I sell Gabriel, I could go to Trent. And I still have 5.3 to spend. That actually works out quite nicely. As you can tell, I do think about what I'm going to say before I record, but I don't cover absolutely everything. So I could do Rico Lewis down to Colwell and basically just play Colwell, Saliba, Trent every week. I'd free up the spot for Saka, although I think I'd find it difficult to get him in still. And I'd have Isak up front. But that's instead of Solanke. Yeah, that's where I'm getting confused. I think the reason I thought I needed 2 cheap defenders is because I was going to sell Raul Jimenez or João Pedro. So potentially I could sell Solanke, get Trent and Colwell, free up the Arsenal spot. Then it would take, let me see how much money I would be off getting Saka. I'd be 1.4 off getting Saka, so I'd have to sell Mbeumo down to like Semenyo. Not bad, but it's a lot of transfers. So that's if I want to sell Solanke, but I don't know how much sense that makes. I said with João Pedro that once I got him in, I wasn't going to sell him until he got injured. But you could argue that his fixtures are worse than Raul Jimenez. I just think João Pedro's minutes might be slightly better. So I don't really want to sell him. If I sell Raul Jimenez to Isak, I need to free up 0.5 million. So then I would have to sell like Rico Lewis down to someone like Howson, I think it is, sorry. And then Pinnock to Lewis Hall would work while Lewis Hall is still 4.4. So I would still have my triple Arsenal defence. Lewis Hall and Howson would cover me the next few weeks. And then I'd have Isak, Solanke and João Pedro up front, which is a bit different to how most people have structured their squad, mostly because a lot of people have Saka where I've got Fernandes. So that is definitely an option. The other consideration, if I want to get Isak, is to still sell Jimenez, but sell Gabriel. Now, I can't go to Van Dijk still, but I could go to like Timber. And then I'd have to free up 0.1 million, which would basically be Lewis to Colwill or Hull. So I could do something like that. Gabriel to Timber, keep the triple Arsenal defence. We know Timber's fit-ish because he came off the bench last night. Colwill was good cover for a while. And then again, I've got Isak and Slanky up front. I just don't know if I'm... I don't like using a transfer moving an Arsenal defender on when in maybe 4 weeks I probably won't want the triple up. And I also don't know about structuring my squad with both Solanke and Isak. I actually think Solanke's not that bad going forward. But Isak is better. But it really does lock off a route to Saka. But maybe I should just forget about him. Like, I know a lot of people see Saka as essential. And please don't get me wrong, I think he's great. But for my squad as it's currently set up, it's a bit like the Haaland discussion. So when we sold, or when a lot of us sold Haaland, it wasn't because we thought he was terrible, even though he has ended up being a terrible FPL pick. But that's just luck, right? It was because you could spend that money elsewhere. It's at that stage for Saka with me. So like, for example, I could keep, let's say I made these downgrades in defence, and I got rid of Timber, right? And I went for like Lewis Hall instead, or something like that, right? Whoever it is. Then I could go for Fernandes instead of Saka. Sorry, I could go for Saka instead of Fernandes, but then I wouldn't have Isak. So what's better moving forward? Isak and Fernandes or Saka and Raul Jimenez? I think it's probably Fernandes and Isak, right? You got nailed on penalty takers. And to be fair, Saka and Raul Jimenez are probably penalty takers as well, but Raul Jimenez doesn't necessarily have the minutes. And Saka is better than Fernandes, but I'm not sure he's so much better than what Isak is to Jimenez. It's a really tricky one, honestly. I looked at my suggested transfers on Hub, as always, link in the description below, 30% off, 30-day free trial at the moment. That wants me to do Solanke to Isak. I think long term it's great. I don't think I can... When I've got so many problems to deal with, I don't think one of them is selling a Southampton or a forward with Southampton away. The other moves are Raul Jimenez to Chris Wood. I don't mind that. I think Chris Wood's actually pretty good for the price going forward. And then Lewis to Gomez. Because of the double game week for Liverpool, probably... it's changing my transfers. This really is just on the fly. Because of the double game week for Liverpool, probably sooner or soon enough, I don't think I want to go for Gomez. I don't want to take that risk. So I feel like he could be great value, but I feel like he's definitely a transfer down the line. So I actually don't mind these moves. I don't think I'm gonna go with the Raul Jimenez to Chris Wood. I think it's Raul Jimenez to Isak, or I just keep him. If I do, I'm rambling so much in this video. This is what 3 transfers does to me. If I go Lewis to Trent, then that pretty much uses up all my money, and I just can't get Saka or Isak. The thing is, later down the line, I could get Trent. I don't have to get him now. I think he's really good from this week, and I kind of want him. But because of Spurs away in 17, I don't feel like there's a clean sheet there. So 18 onwards, as I said the other day, is really where you want your Liverpool players. So for example, right, let me go into the My Team tool. Let's say I do, I'm really losing track of what I'm thinking of now. Let's say I do Raul Jimenez to Isak, and I fund that by doing, let's just do the Lewis out to Hall and the Pinnock to Howson. Yeah, 4.3 million. Let's just say I keep Gabriel for now, right? And I hope he's back soon. So I put him in. That then gives me this week a defence of, because I'd play Lewis Hall for sure against Leicester. So let me put him in. I'd put Isak in instead of Rodgers. So it would let me bench Rodgers this week, which is also not that bad. So I'd have a defence of Raya, Gabriel, Saliba. And if Gabriel doesn't play, I would have Howson as my first defender ahead of Greaves. West Ham at home, pretty good. Lewis Hall, decent against Leicester at home. Hopefully he keeps his place. And the rest of the attack would look decent, right? Palmer, Salah, Fernandes, Mbeumo. Again, Fernandes and Mbeumo could have better fixtures, but they look better in future weeks. Isak, Solanke, João Pedro. In game week 17, I wouldn't be as concerned about not having Trent because it's Spurs away. The only thing in the back of my mind is, if he does well, he'll go up in price even before Spurs, and that's not ideal. I would have triple Arsenal defence, hopefully, if Gabriel's back, and Lewis Hall against Ipswich away. And on the bench, I'd have Greaves against Newcastle at home, Howson against Man United away. Not great cover, but I would hope that Gabriel's back by them. And if he's not, I could even consider selling him. And then Palmer against Everton away, Salah Spurs away, Fernandes, Bournemouth at home, Mbeumo Forest at home. That midfield suddenly looks a lot better than it does this week. ISAK, Ipswich away, Solanke, Liverpool at home, not up against the Liverpool defender in my team. João Pedro, West Ham away. Sorry, I had to cut the recording there because I accidentally reset all the transfers that I made and it would have looked really weird. But yeah, Game Week 17 team looks pretty nice. And the other good thing about bringing in ISAK is it means I'm less reliant on having to play Rodgers so much. Because with Raul Jimenez, there is a couple of times, although he's got some good fixtures, that I would want to bench him. So by selling him and getting ISAK, I can bench Rodgers more often. And I can still use him as cover. But if he gets that 5th yellow card, it's hopefully not such a problem for my team. So that's Game Week 17. I could even roll the transfer that week. And then Game Week 18, I would have 2 free moves. So I'd still have triple Arsenal defence with Ipswich at home. Lewis Hall would have Aston Villa at home. Or I could play Howson for Bournemouth against Palace at home. I'd have a midfield of Palmer, Fulham at home. Salah, Leicester at home. And although I'd be fully aware that Saka could get a monster haul against Ipswich, I'd captain Salah either way against Leicester. So Saka could do damage to me, but I don't think a huge amount of people will captain him versus Salah in Game Week 18. Fernandes, Wolves away, Mbeumo, Brighton away, ISAK, Villa at home, Solanke, Forest away, João Pedro, Brentford at home. So with 2 free transfers, that could even be a roll. I wouldn't have to make any moves, but if I really wanted to get Trent in still for that great fixture run that Liverpool have 18 onwards, I could sell one of my Arsenal defenders, Gabriel if he's still out or Saliba if he's not, and I would just have to free up some money with the 2 moves. So I would put in Trent and I would have to free up 0.9 million. So the move I would probably make is getting rid of Mbeumo and I'd have 6.4 million to spend, which isn't quite enough to go to Eze, but I could go all the way down to Enzo, I could go to Semenyo, whoever it might be. Maybe not the best time to bring in Semenyo, but I would have options. And if I really wanted to leave myself open for getting Eze, I could sell João Pedro instead of Raul Jimenez because he's a bit more expensive. So that would give me a bit of a buffer to get him. But I don't think I want to sell João Pedro over Raul Jimenez. So if I didn't want to get Trent, I could get Van Dijk later instead. And playing triple Arsenal defence against Ipswich at home is not a problem. So even potentially, I could not make those moves and just go into Game Week 19 with 3 free transfers again and decide what to do. So yeah, I'm not super close to knowing which route I'm going to take, but I think it's basically get Trent this week or get ISAK. I don't think I'm going to get Saka. I don't really have a great way to do it now because of that price rise last night, unless I just get Van Dijk. So I could, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about now, then I'm going to end the video. I could go Gabriel. Did I already show you this earlier? I may well have done. Gabriel to Van Dijk, because I'm probably more likely to sell Gabriel than Saliba when he's a doubt. Fernandes to Saka, and then Lewis down to whoever, right? Probably not Munoz because he's on 4 yellow cards. Next 2 fixtures aren't great, but like Colwell or Hall. So I could still get my Liverpool defender in. It just wouldn't be Trent. But I would have Saka. And that would probably... The thing with Saka is, it's going well without him, and I think it could continue to do so. But every week he's just playing on my mind. I'm waiting for that mega haul, which is definitely going to come soon. Anyway, let me know what you think. 3 transfers just creates too many options. It's not good for someone like me who's a bit indecisive at times. But Trent or ISAK, I think, are higher priorities than getting Saka. But one of those 3 players is almost certainly coming into my team this week. If you've got through this whole video, fair play to you. Give it a like, hit that subscribe button, rate 5 stars if you listen on podcast. Check out Fantasy Football Hub and all their tools using the link in the description below. 30% off at the moment, a 30-day free trial. Otherwise, as long as there's no more announcements from FPL about mystery chips and stuff like that, I'll catch you tomorrow for final thoughts.